edited. What solid evidence do we have that Platonism has any influence on Judaism? If we continue down our line of masters, schools of Athens, as I trace the roots of Thales down to Plato, the next three school of masters after Plato is Aristotle, who, after the conquest of Alexander the Great, is sent into exile by the Eleusinian priest, who charge Aristotle with blasphemy against the gods. And Aristotle was replaced by Theophrastus, who was also charged by the Athenian religious leaders with blasphemy against the gods. Now keep in mind, all of this is happening after Socrates. And what is happening with these masters of Athens being at odds with the religious leaders, the priests, the Eleusinians? They're obviously challenging their dogmas and superstitions. Now Theophrastus was the student and new master of the school who taught Demetrius Phalerum. Demetrius Phalerum is also exiled, and he moves to Alexandria with Pyrrho the Skeptic. After traveling the world with Alexander the Great, meeting Brahmins and Magi, and living amongst the Chaldeans in Babylon. And they went down to the court of Ptolemy in Alexandria to help build the library. According to multiple sources, Demetrius Phalerum was trying to collect all the books in the inhabitable world, and was commissioned by Ptolemy to translate the laws of the Jews into Greek. In my personal opinion, it is at this time when the Pentateuch is put together in its current monotheistic form, with influences from the Platonists of the time period. You see, we have a direct line from Thales, the pre-socratics, all the way down to Plato, and then continuing down to Demetrius, who moves to Alexandria, Egypt, and creates the Pentateuch. Here's what Josephus says about this. When Alexander had reigned 12 years, and after him Ptolemy Soter 40 years, Philadelphus then took the kingdom of Egypt and held it 40 years within one. He procured the law to be interpreted and set free those who were come from Jerusalem into Egypt and were in slavery there, who were 120,000. The occasion was this: Demetrius Phalerum, who was library keeper to the king, was now endeavoring, if it were possible, to gather together all the books that were in the habitable earth, and buying whatsoever was anywhere valuable or agreeable to the king's inclination, to which inclination of his Demetrius was zealously subservient. And when once Ptolemy asked him how many tens of thousands of books he had collected, he replied that he already had 20 times 10,000, but that in a little time he should have 50 times 10,000. Would be said he had been informed that there were many books of the laws among the Jews worthy of inquiring for, and worthy of the king's library, but which, being written of characters and in dialect of their own, will cause no small pains in getting them translated into the Greek tongue, that the character in which they are written seems to be like that which is proper to the character of the Syrians, and that its sound when pronounced is like theirs also, and that this sound appears to be peculiar to themselves, wherefore he said that nothing hindered why they might not get those books to be translated also. For while nothing is wanting that is necessary for that purpose, we may have their books also in this library. So the king thought that Demetrius was very zealous to procure him an abundance of books, and that he suggested that this was exceeding proper for him to do, and therefore he wrote to the Jewish high priest that he should act accordingly. Demetrius wrote in a letter, "It is not fit for us, O king, to overlook things hastily or to deceive ourselves, but to lay the truth open. For since we have determined not only to get the laws of the Jews transcribed, but interpreted also, for thy satisfaction, by what means can we do this, while so many of the Jews are now slaves in thy kingdom? For both these people and we also worship the same God, the framer of all things. We call him, and that truly, by the Greek Xena, or Jupiter, because he breathes life into all men. Wherefore do thou restore these men to their own country, and that this do the honor of God, because these men pay a peculiar excellent worship to him. Notice how Demetrius is already comparing his framer of all things, the divine craftsman or demiurge, who he was most likely comparing to Yahweh in order to unify this god with Jupiter. Keep in mind, less than a century before this, the fragments of the Jewish communities that we have are still polytheistic. We have a direct line from the masters of the Athens Academy, from Thales all the way down to Demetrius, who was writing this letter to the Jews, who was the face of the creation of the Pentateuch. I think there is more than enough evidence to lay this argument out that this is the beginning of the trend of monotheism, and at this time, the priesthoods of Yahweh and El synced with that of the craftsmen and demiurgic creator gods of Egypt and Greece. Yahweh of the Elohim and the god who has its roots all over Mesopotamia and the Mediterranean world, such as Kronos, El, Ptah, Yahweh or Zeus or Amun-Ra. These so-called pagans that lived after this time period also adopt the same monist trends the Judeo-Christians adopt. The Sol Invictus religion would come from that, and the Neoplatonist philosophers and theurgists were no exception to this. The Chaldean oracles also show a one who is above all gods. The philosophy of the time, Platonism to Middle Platonism and eventually Neoplatonism, would continue to influence the theology of whatever time matched it. I'll leave you with this. In a text from Plutarch called Moralia, he says, "Moreover, most people believe that Ammon is the name given to Zeus in the land of the Egyptians, a name which we, with a slight alteration, pronounce Amun. But Manetho of Sebentis thinks that the meaning concealed or concealment lies in this word. Hecataeus of Abdera says that the Egyptians use the expression one to another whenever they call to anyone, for the word is a form of address. When they therefore address the supreme God, whom they believe to be the same as the universe, as if he were invisible, concealed, and implore him to make visible himself and manifest to them, they use the word Amen. So great then was the circumspection of the Egyptians in their wisdom, touching all that had to do with the gods." Plutarch is proposing that the term Amen is a shout or chant that is used to call on any of the gods. Not just Ammon, but any of the gods, including the supreme invisible one. He also cites Hecataeus of Abdera for this very idea, and it turns out that Hecataeus of Abdera is the oldest fragment that we have citation of Moses outside of the Hebrew Bible. Let me know what you guys think about this stuff. Leave it in the comments. Make sure you like and subscribe. You have just attained true gnosis.